The Amazing Digital Circus is a psychological dark comedy about cute cartoon characters who hate their lives. That isn't from Wikipedia. That is, almost verbatim, how the description of the series pilot describes itself. Today we will be examining that claim. Is the show psychological? Is it dark? Is it even a comedy? All those questions and more will be answered in this analysis video. But before we start, I'd like to clarify a few things. This video is not about the following things: any controversy surrounding the voice cast of the show, any controversy surrounding its creator Gooseworks, or anything surrounding the show's massive fandom. Hopefully this will be an outsider's perspective. The first episode of The Amazing Digital Circus is called Pilot. Why are so many first episodes of shows about airplanes, am I right? The opening musical number serves the purpose of introducing us to Kane, the host of this wacky world. He gets right away to breaking the fourth wall as he introduces himself and the other characters. I like this meta sort of opening, but it probably set a precedent for future indie animation pilots to be really hand-holdy and unassuming of their audience's intelligence.
Kane, is this one of your NPCs, or is this a new sucker?
Whoa, stop right there, hold on. Did you notice how the first substantial lines of dialogue from a human character are spoken by Jax? Foreshadowing is a literary device in which
these activities may include ball pits, mini golf, and more!
This is the show's first attempt at a joke, and it's not very funny. Read the Wikipedia page for joke for more info on humor. I think in a more predictable show, we'd start off with wacky cartoon characters who eventually realize they're real humans trapped in a simulation. But I like how The Amazing Digital Circus actually starts off by establishing that these cartoon characters are really humans. Is it particularly psychological? I'm not really sure. Over the course of episode 1, we're introduced to our lovable cast of characters. Pomni is the obvious audience surrogate who spends the entire episode looking for an exit. Ragatha is the caring voice of reason and compassion. Gangle is the relatable crybaby. Kinger has a few screws loose. Jax is an asshole, and Zoople is an asshole, but for more present and understandable reasons. Rewatching the show for a second time, I expected to hate Jax from the start, but he's actually fairly tolerable in the first episode.
Ladies first. No, wait, why would I say that?
I found that moment kind of funny, despite my better judgment. The last shot of the episode looks like The Last Supper. Get it? Is this show deep yet? I honestly don't get why this was done besides referencing a famous painting.
Very sticky indeed!
Sounds
Bubble, you can't say that.
This is the first joke in the show that I found funny on my first watch through. It's stupid, but I like it.
so. Our entire existence here is just LARPing.
Wee woo. That's the LARP alarm going off.
I call shotgun.
Calling shotgun is when you want the passenger seat, not the driver's seat, Jax. You fucking idiot. I'm surprised there wasn't a joke during this scene like, oh god, all this confetti is tanking the frame rate. The constructed world of this episode feels very empty in a way. I don't know much about 3D animation, but I think it might be an issue with the lighting, as both scenes in the Candy Kingdom and the desert during the truck chase feel too bright to be this empty. You could excuse it from a writing standpoint, considering this is a world that Kane created, but that doesn't change the fact that I find it ugly. It could also just be a budget problem. Easily the most interesting part of this episode is when Pomni and an NPC named Gummigoo fall through the world's map into a room that contains 3D models for every NPC character. I guess you could say this is where the show gets psychological, as it's probably the closest we get to some Black Mirror sort of shit, you know, a video game character realizing they're just an NPC and all that. I actually find it really cool from a writing standpoint. Gummigoo goes back to the circus with the rest of the gang, but he gets popped out of existence. That's funny. I don't have much to say about this episode. It's fine. They solve most of the problems of the last episode by keeping things in a more contained atmospheric setting. This monster is what 12-year-olds think is scary.
It's called a manic episode, and you're getting 3 more seasons. Anyway.
Episode 4 sees the digital gang working at a fast food restaurant where Gangle gets to be the annoying manager. If you couldn't tell, I think her voice gets to be pretty annoying when she isn't shy and reserved.
I like you better when you're sad.
For once, I agree with Jax. Pomni runs into Gummy Goo again where she... Oh god, now I'm just summarizing the episodes.
I wonder what's for dinner.
In the notes I was taking while watching this episode for the first time, I wrote down that I thought Gangle's masks were a metaphor for autistic masking. I haven't interacted with fan theories at all, so it's weird that I came to this conclusion all by myself. Am I reading too far into things? Is Gooseworks herself autistic? I'm autistic, and these sorts of things make me feel alienated from other autistic people, because I feel like I don't experience masking at all. I've heard masking described as putting on a performance every time you socially interact, and that just sounds like an alien concept to me. Maybe I'm just stuck in a state of perpetual masking that's been happening subconsciously since I was 12. Leave your Freudian psychoanalysis thoughts in the comments down below. This shot represents every problem I have with how this show literally frames things. Like, why isn't it just zoomed in like this? Why do they have to be so tiny? Anyways, episode 5 is called Untitled, which I really like. The episode centers around the suggestion box that caused the last episode's fast food plot, so they could have called it, Suggestion Box Sillies or something, but no, it's just called Untitled. And just like an abstract painting, this is where the show starts to get interesting. The first of Gangle's suggestions is to turn everyone into anime, which is really cute. Gangle is cute in this. I actually love Gangle. The next suggestion is stargazing, which features Jax being likable for a total of 10 seconds. We also get a peep into how Jax views Ragatha and why he doesn't trust her. Has she been in the circus so long that she just practices morality to get on people's good sides? Considering Gooseworks loves Jax and only Jax, all of his assumptions are probably right. The intermission sequence is really well animated and catchy. I like it. The next suggestion from Zubul is in a bar. The digital gang talk about their past lives before entering the circus, which they remember surprisingly a lot of considering the fact they can't remember their own names. Zubul was a bartender, Pomni was an accountant at a supermarket, Gangle obviously worked in fast food, Kinger can't remember anything, Jax is being a bitch the whole time, and Ragatha worked in real estate. That's like 2 steps away from being a landlord. Maybe she is evil. Seriously though, why is Jax back to being a bitch? I thought you went through character development. This is probably the best joke in the show. The evil characters in the softball adventure are, unfunny and gay. The whole episode kind of falls apart when we get to this suggestion. Jax gets put in a maid dress because he's trans, because he's Gooseworks' self-insert or whatever. This episode is where the running cycle of Jax comes to a head. Jax is an asshole, other characters call him out on this, but he doesn't change. I don't know whether to call it infuriating or just kind of boring.
What would you do if I abstracted tomorrow?
I'd jerk off. And I'd think about you.
In episode 6, as the title suggests, they all get guns. The characters look cool with guns, except for Jax, who looks like Shadow the Hedgehog when he got a gun. This episode was written just for Jax, because this whole thing is like, I like violence. The whole plot is really just a setup for Jax and Pomni to talk to each other, which I don't mind. You know, plots exist to force character interaction sometimes, but here it feels a little unnatural, especially considering how much time is devoted to just Jax and Pomni. It isn't all Jax and Pomni, of course. We've got some good moments between Zubul and Gangle, and a heartfelt scene between Ragatha and Kinger. But the confrontation between Jax and Pomni once they've shot everyone feels like the main plot thing that happens in the episode. It's kind of cathartic to see Pomni try and beat up Jax like this, but the moment kind of loses all weight when you realize Jax probably isn't going to learn anything from this.
You are my playthings, and I get joy out of making you suffer. I'm just a misunderstood little chicken fetus in an egg that needs to be cracked open.
Before the finale came out, I remember seeing this clip in a compilation as proof that Jax was trans. All I have to say to that is I feel like trans people who participate in the whole egg culture thing are just as bad as those weirdo femboy people. As a gay guy who used to be very effeminate, every dude who's wanted me to be a trans girl has just wanted to fuck me, you know? It's not cute. I could write a whole essay about this scene, but I'm not going to because I don't want to. In my notes for this episode, I wrote down, quote, I'm getting hour-long theory videos in my recommendations now, but this feels like it'd be a hard show to theorize about. It feels really blunt, and it doesn't really try to hide anything, unquote. That's harsh, but I think I still feel the same way. Besides a few appearances of a CNA logo and the constant reappearance of the number 57, I couldn't really think of much to theorize about the first time I watched the show. Episode 7 is where my personal story with the amazing digital circus starts. When it came out in December of 2025, there was so much buzz about it on Twitter, it reached the feeds of people like me who weren't even fans of the show. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to binge every episode that had been released up to that point, writing down notes as I went along. I wrote the least notes about episode 3, but I also didn't write many notes about episode 7. It's easily the best written episode of the whole show so far, so I didn't have much to comment on. It's just really good in my opinion. The episode centers around Abel, a supposed human stuck in the body of a blank NPC who reveals to the digital gang a way to leave the circus. When they finally get to the master console of Kane's office, Jax does this, and that's how the show ends. Lightning round theme analysis. This guy's name is Abel because Cain and Abel from the Bible, and the red and blue buttons are like the Matrix. Okay, that's it.
Hey Jax, can you come and rub sunscreen on our backs?
Everybody come and lick my puh.
Episode 8 is titled with a keyboard smash, and it starts with a keyboard smash of an intro. What is all this stuff? I still have no idea.
Huh? Listen, we're not gonna have you wandering off alone somewhere and abstracting or something.
Foreshadowing is a literary device in which... When the digital gang convene in the Circus Cafe, Pomni gets the bright idea of putting a bucket on Kinger's head and asking him about Kane. When Kinger reveals that he actually programmed Kane, Jax runs off and realizes that this is all real during a panic attack. I think people made fun of this moment. You know, how come it took him this long to realize the circus is real? But it fits in line with Jax's past rationalizations of we're all just cartoon characters and it's all just a dream and stuff. I find it funny that Jax is the last character to come to terms with the reality of his digital existence. It's very fitting. Speaking of Jax, he honestly isn't too unlikable in this episode or the last episode. Sure, he trapped everybody in the circus last episode, which also felt like a very Jax thing to do, but you could feel the distress in his actions and the inability to come to terms with his digital existence being real. Or, after the finale came out, I could interpret it as him not wanting to return to his real life. It makes perfect sense, and it's probably why these last 2 episodes are the best for Jax's character development. Hopefully the finale doesn't throw all of this down the drain, right? While Kinger tries to access Kane's code, the digital gang, in their attempts to distract Kane, give up on pleasing him and just start berating him and telling him how much of a failure he is. Months after this episode came out, someone posted the scene onto Twitter, which resulted in a lot of people making fun of the dialogue. Around the same time, people were doing the same thing to Glitch's Game Over's pilot. This leads to an interesting point of discussion and something I haven't mentioned thus far. Is the dialogue in the Amazing Digital Circus good? Most of the time it's perfectly serviceable. There are definitely a lot of cringy moments that I've highlighted, and there's also plenty of what Twitter has coined therapy speak. The best example being Ragathan Kinger's therapy session in episode 6. Obviously, therapy speak is more of Twitter being pessimistic than an actual quantifiable thing. Unless you want every show to have as many sincere emotional moments as South Park does, you're going to run into therapy speak eventually. Anyways, my favorite show is My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Why am I pretending to be an expert on dialogue? Right as Kane starts to go insane and torture everyone, Kinger accidentally deletes Kane, which leads to this.
I accidentally killed Kane.
Holy shit.
This lands like the only swear in a PG-13 Marvel movie, but I still like it.
Did you not read the 10th commandment? Thou shalt fap. When the Pomni is away, the Jax comes out to play.
2 weeks before it released on YouTube, the last episode of The Amazing Digital Circus actually released in theaters. That's right, a bunch of real sentient preteens spent real money they got from their real parents to watch a YouTube video in a movie theater. I was not one of these preteens, so I had to wait 2 more weeks, where basically the whole movie was spoiled to me. Technically, it was leaked in Portuguese before it came out in theaters, where I also had it spoiled to me, but that wasn't canon or whatever. Anyways, let's get into this finale. After deleting Kane, King reveals that the digital gang are brain scans of real humans, which shatters all hope of an escape. This is poorly communicated, and any weight the moment has is immediately ruined by Jax being an asshole and spouting nonsense. You know what, maybe I am an expert on dialogue, because I feel like there's a sudden drop in the quality of dialogue in this episode. It's hard to describe, but there's just something off here. Like, things are being said, but there's no reason for why they're being said. In general, the finale has a vibe like it expects you to know a bunch of things it never told you. Maybe it's just an issue with the pacing, considering Jax randomly abstracts off screen. I saw a clip of a guy reacting to this where he thought the abstraction was Kaufmo, who abstracted in episode 1, escaping from the cellar, which is actually perfectly reasonable and probably what I would have thought was happening if this wasn't spoiled for me beforehand. Pomni has a gun, which I suppose she conjured herself, which she uses to shoot out a bunch of lights so she can hug Jax's abstraction, so she can enter Jax's mind palace, where she can view all of Jax's horrible thoughts, like wanting to strangle Pomni, wanting to cartoonishly kill Zubul, and wanting to fuck Gangle. What? Is this really your self-insert Gooseworks? All he does is harass women. Pomni then runs into all the different Jaxes, like Trans Jax and Wacky Jax. Piano Jax gives Pomni the key into the real Jax's head, where we see him confess his life story to a past circus member, Ribbit. This one interaction eventually turns him into an asshole for some reason, which causes Ribbit and Kaufmo to abstract. A perfectly okay cover of Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder starts playing while we get an edit of Jax for some reason. That's all I can describe it as, an edit. It's kind of a weird song to use considering Stevie Wonder wrote it about his newborn daughter. Like, didn't Gooseworks realize it'd be weird to have the lyrics, Isn't She Lovely, less than 1 minute old, play over a montage of her cartoon rabbit self-insert? If Gooseworks wasn't a hack, she'd play a cover of Have a Talk with God by Stevie Wonder, where every mention of God is replaced with Kane. Then Kane is back and, wait, what? How? Why? Why is this happening? Kane, who is somehow still alive, connects to the internet, where he learns about the digital gang's real-life counterparts. Kane then flies back to the circus and apologizes for all that he's done. The episode basically ends after he shows everybody how the lives of their real-life counterparts are playing out. They accept they're never leaving the circus, and that's kind of it. We get to see their real-life counterparts at a bus stop, and I actually like this real-life cast, especially Gangle's actor. But I'm supposed to believe Jax looks like this? I'm sorry, but Jax looks exactly like his voice actor Michael Kovac's ugly fucking face. So, that was The Amazing Digital Circus. The only reason we ever learn about Kaufmo and Ribbit is because this is the Jax show. We never learn more about CNA or Scratch, or see an abstraction happen on screen, or learn why Kane wasn't fully deleted, and all our characters are helpless immortal mind scans who are trapped in a hell of their own design. There were exactly 3 good episodes before the finale fucked everything up. So then, let's review our characters. Jax spent most of the series hogging screen time and dialogue, and all of his possible character development was squandered at the last second. If episode 8 led to a more coherent finale, I do believe that Jax could have been redeemed and forgiven for his past actions, but that sadly didn't happen. Jax will leave his mark in history as possibly the worst self-insert character of all time. Pomni put in a good effort, but to quote a YouTube comment, Pomni is the camera used to film the Jax show. At the end of episode 8, Kinger was probably the most plot-relevant character, as both the designer and the leader of Kane. Too bad Kane comes back for no reason and renders everything in the last 2 episodes completely pointless. Sorry, Kinger. There's a character in the show named Ragatha? I hardly noticed. Seriously though, I'm not even a big fan of Ragatha, and I still think she was robbed of screen time. Probably by Jax. In the end, the most important thing Zooble did was use a bunch of her arms to lasso Jax's abstraction. That's it. Gangle basically falls into the same camp as Ragatha by the finale, but at least she basically got her own episode in episode 4, unlike Zooble and Ragatha. Unless you count Zooble's therapy sessions in episode 3 as her having her own episode. I can't even come up with an example like that for Ragatha. Anyways, I've saved Gangle for last because she's my favorite character. She deserved to be in a better written show than this one. Alright, that was my first attempt at a YouTube video. I'm sorry if it sucks, I watched the series again after the finale came out. I wrote a script. I have to go edit this video now. I hope you liked it. I hope it brings back feelings of old YouTube, like the Nostalgia Critic. I hope it conjures that, because the audio is terrible. I know the audio is terrible. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching all of this.